Hi, I'm Hannah.
Hi, I'm Abby.
And this is Spilling Ink,
the Inkspill podcast.
We are kicking off the year 2024 with our winter season.
Yes, 4 episodes of goodness.
Yeah. And if you listen to our introductory episode, hopefully you'll have an idea of how this is going to work by now. We're going to be getting some pretty good guests in to talk to us about their creative process.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about our own projects as well that we're wanting to work on throughout this year. Mm-hmm. And we are going to be setting some creative activities, keeping the Inkspill vibes. We're going to still be getting that kind of creative element through, hopefully, on this podcast.
Yeah.
Which should be good.
You know, we've just set like very minimal goals for ourselves. Like we're not over egging the pudding at all.
I know. And it's actually been really interesting because over the past 2 weeks, obviously, I've been off school and I've been working on the Inkspill website.
You have?
And I did a little bit of an about page where I was talking about, how we started, what we've kind of gone through. And I know we talked about it in the introductory episode, but I thought 2023 was a lot. 2024 has got some pretty huge things in store.
Yes.
So I think it's nice, isn't it, that we're going to have this podcast to document that and to talk about.
Yeah, it is. It's nice to record stuff. It's like our own little archive of what we as creatives want to share and create with people, and also what we want to encourage others to do. And that's
absolutely,
that's a nice thing to do, I think.
I think as well, what I'm really excited about is that this is something we're going to kind of do alongside other people. So the projects we're going to be working on, hopefully you guys are going to be working on them too. And we can check in with each other at Inkspill sessions. We can check in with each other on social media. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to kind of almost write with everybody else, because at Inkspill we get so busy, don't we, running the night.
Yeah.
We don't really get a chance to do that, do we?
We never write at Inkspill. Yeah. We never actually write. We're always like hosting and switched on and trying stuff.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a really nice opportunity for us to actually focus on ourselves as writers a little bit.
I think it's definitely, we love Inkspill. Inkspill is a foundation of our friendship, which we both really value, and it's been really lovely to have someone who is as creatively minded as myself to do this with, but we've definitely kind of neglected the actual creativity of it beyond being workshop facilitators.
Definitely. I think I'm excited too, because we're always learning as writers, aren't we? What a cheesy sentiment, but we are. And I think I'm excited to meet different people through this podcast and really chat to them about their process, how they write, because I am still very much a sponge when it comes to writing. I'm still learning my craft. I'm still perfecting my craft, and I'm really excited to hopefully steal a few ideas from other writers, which be useful.
Writing's cyclical. Like, we all steal stuff and then give it away, and then someone else uses it and we're like, oh, that's really cool. Over Christmas I've been doing a lot of story structure reading, just because I'm writing my first novel, which is not the project that's going to go with this,
but it's an exciting thing to say.
Very exciting thing to say. I hit 34,000 words on my second draft. The first draft was only 43,000 words, so it's massively expanded, which is so cool. But I don't know a lot about story structure, and I've definitely been I think what there's like a theory, I don't know if it's just on TikTok or just generally, of like writers, but there's like plotters and pantsers, and plotters like thoroughly go through everything and like are meticulous and very detail orientated, and there's pantsers who are like just flying by the seat of their pants and just going for it. You can.
I wanted to talk to you about that today as well, because that's something we're going to come on to, isn't it? Like how we write, and that's exactly what I wanted to say to you and ask you what your process is. But we'll get to that.
We will.
So with the novel you've been working on, what would you kind of say? Do you feel as though you're at that word count because you've kind of, your first draft has been a bit of a word vomit, get all the ideas out, and now it's about refining?
I think it's really funny. I have a friend who's read the first draft, and he's not a reader, and he's been so like passionate, engaged about it. It's been wonderful and really special, because he read the first draft and was like, this is great, this is really, really good. And I'm like, no, this is like the skeleton, this is like bare bones, this is like nothing. Like the second draft I'm now on is like, I thought it was just gonna like enhance it and put like organs in, which I know is like a really weird sort of image, but it works for me.
Give it heart.
And give it heart. But actually I've kind of come back to it and been like, oh no, there are huge plot points. Like, there's a point where my protagonist just skips like 3 months of her life and just is like, I'm fine now. And I was like, maybe we don't do that. This first draft has only probably expanded the first quarter to third of that first draft. So it's gonna, I think I might hit 90k. Brilliant. Which is insane.
That is insane. Do you think that when you hold that as well, that's going to be a real chunk of a novel in your hands? Yeah. It's going to be beautiful.
It's going to be hefty. I've seen people who are like, to motivate themselves, they print off their drafts as they like physically get them nicely bound and printed. And I was like, I think I might leave the first draft and come back and like print off like the second one nicely. But I'm not sure yet. We'll see.
You can't beat a physical printout of your work, and I think that's something that I do as well. When I was doing my master's degree and doing my dissertation, which was a manuscript, basically the kind of the first third of a novel, the most useful thing that I found was printing off the manuscript, having it physically in front of you with a red pen and just going through, crossing bits out, just being savage basically.
Yeah.
Because when you've got it in front of you and you can, that physicality, you notice things that you just don't notice on a screen.
See on the screen, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I completely agree with you. I think that's definitely a really good way of going about it. But we will come to this. I feel as though we may be skipping
slightly
ahead.
Jumped ahead. Sorry, I got excited.
No, and it's an exciting thing. It definitely is.
Before we get onto like the body of the podcast, let's talk about what we read over Christmas, because you have actually had some time to read.
I've had
so
some time. It's been beautiful, I can't lie. So it's been really nice actually, because I've had some time to read things other than what I would be teaching in school. So believe it or not, I don't actually like to spend most of my time reading YA fiction. I like, reading things that mean something to me, that resonate with me, not just children. So I spent my time reading Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. It's Beautiful. One of those that's been on my bookshelf for absolutely ages, and I've just never gotten around to it. And it's only dinky.
It's dinky.
Yeah.
It's funny, I would have pinned you as a Virginia Woolf lover.
Yeah.
I love Orlando. I think it's beautiful. I studied at uni, and now I'm saying it, I haven't read it in a while, so I'd like to come back to it probably. Following this recording, I might reread it. But yeah, Room of One's Own it's
different for me because I am a huge Woolf fan, and I absolutely love Mrs. Dalloway. I find that really inspirational. I actually, when I was doing my undergrad, Mrs. Dalloway inspired quite a lot of my creative process at that time. Kind of, the stream of consciousness was really new to me, really experimental, and I really loved playing about with my writing using stream of consciousness, so that was really good. So I was interested in reading A Room of One's Own because obviously that's an essay of hers. It was a lecture that she was planning on delivering, and I think it got a little bit out of hand. I think the actual talk she delivered was streamlined massively, so it was really nice to kind of see the bulked out version of it. And God, there was just some real gems in there of absolute feminist gold. And just,
do you not think she's a very reassuring writer as a feminist to read, and you're like, it's not just me, like I'm not insane?
I think that's it. It's like relatability, isn't it? And the fact that this was being written in the early 1900s, and I was still like, yes, that's exactly it. In 2024 is deeply worrying, really, I would say.
Yeah, the world is...
But also reassuring that someone else has kind of been through that process. And I think what I love as well, she's very witty in this text.
She is. She's very bright.
Really funny, really sarcastic.
Quite cutting.
Really dry, and I just my kind of humour 100%. So really enjoyed reading A Room of One's Own.
Good for you.
What about you? What have you been reading?
So I have a confession. I spent the entirety of New Year's Eve reading, not for the joy of reading, the delight of reading, but because I set my Goodreads reading goal to 52 books, and I was 6 books short after being ill over Christmas.
Oh no.
And I have never been so close before. I've always set my reading goal way, way too high. And I was like, no, we're going to do this. Like, this is not, I'm 6 books away. So I spent New Year's Eve reading 6 short books. I won't talk about all of them because it's a lot of books. But I will say I finished the A to Z of Superstition by Ian Harker.
Okay.
I encountered Ian at a poetry night in Wakefield, and alongside another poet called Charlotte Wetton, whose collection I also read probably end of November. And read hers, loved it. It's called Accessioning. It's about like museum exhibits and like creating poems out of them, and I think you'd really like it. I might lend it to you. And it's beautiful. And for some reason I'd put Ian's book to one side. I think maybe I'd like got distracted and picked something else up, or like just wanted something a bit different after, sometimes reading 2 poetry collections can be a lot. And I came back to it and I finished it, and it is absolutely beautiful. It is so good. It's so magnetic. It really pulled me through because I'm a really slow poetry reader. I often read it on the page and then I read it aloud and then I highlight it. And then I almost not meditate, because that sounds really silly, but I almost sit with it for a little bit.
I think that's what you have to do, really.
Yeah.
It's an experience. Reading poetry it's about this immersion, isn't it? So you need to just sit and be immersed.
Yes, yeah, very much. And I have really taken the effort, and I think that's why people who are taught poetry really struggle with it, is because they're taught to they're taught poetry, they're not actually taught how to enjoy it and experience it.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. I would really recommend it. I absolutely loved it. And yeah, I'll probably send you home with some books today.
No, lovely.
Because it was super. It just covered loads of. Okay, the one poem I want to talk about is quickly is I can't remember the title of it, but it's about red kites, and it's about, I think he's talking to like an immigrant in a centre in Leeds, I believe is the setting, and he's learning English, and in this poem they see a red kite, and what I assume is the poet's perspective is like, oh my god, how beautiful, like incredible, like you don't see birds of prey that often. And the other character, the refugee, speaks about how basically they are vermin in his country, and they kill them because they kill the sheep, so they kill these massive birds of prey. And there's like a pull at the end, and it talks about how because he's learned the English language and he says it in his language, and then the poet perspective says a red kite, and he says red kitty because he reads it and he can't pronounce it.
Yeah.
And it's like beautiful. I think it's italicized, and it's just so powerful. And the end of the poem, which I believed is italicized, is like basically there are some letters in English words that we don't pronounce. They're there, but we don't pronounce. And there are some letters in English words that we that change the meaning of all the letters around them.
Yeah.
And it was like such a gut punch of an ending, and it like really resonated with me. I think especially with everything going on politically. It just really got me. So yeah. Said of Superstition by Ian Harker is my like. I think it was one of the last books I read last year and was brilliant. So yeah.
Brilliant. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got quite a few friends, just kind of going back to what you're talking about with Goodreads, who have done exactly that. I mean, I think the Goodreads wrap up is our Spotify wrap up, isn't it?
Yes.
We get to the end of the year and it's just this really nice time to think about how many books you've read, what you kind of learned from each book. But I've never done Goodreads because I don't like that pressure of setting yourself a goal and not being able to live
healthy.
up to it.
That's really well adjusted.
Because I just hate feeling like I'm letting myself down, and I think in day-to-day life we put ourselves under so much pressure as it is, for me to then say, well, on top of this, if you don't read 5 books a month, you're behind, you're failing. I can't deal with that pressure because I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that I'd love to be able to say that this year I'm going to set myself a Goodreads goal.
Yes.
Because I would love to read more. As an English teacher, it's so upsetting that you have such a love for English and such a passion for English, and yet you're so exhausted that you don't get to read and you don't get to enjoy English and literature anymore.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So I'd love to set a limit. I'm scared to set a limit.
Set something reasonable. Like, I did 52 this year, and it instantly was like, do you want to do 53? And I was like, no, I do not want to do 53. I'm good. Like, 52 is very happy.
I just think that's a huge amount of books. 52. Yeah. I mean, if you think about, I think realistically, with how busy life is, I would be able to do 1-2 max a month. Yeah. So for me, maximum it's going to be 24. Yeah. So you read 4 books a month.
I mean, I read 6 on New Year's Day, so the numbers are definitely like. I think it was May. I read no books in May,
right?
Because a game came out and I played that as my downtime said. But yeah, it's a lot. Do something healthy. And the other thing I want to throw out there is there's a whole lot of discussion about Goodreads versus Storygraph.
What's Storygraph?
So exactly, Goodreads is owned by Amazon, and
this is not an ad for Goodreads or Storygraph or Amazon.
If this one sponsors basically Goodreads is owned by Amazon, and that influences like Amazon charts and stuff, and people have used it to like review bomb people. It's been quite messy with Goodreads, particularly this last year.
Okay.
And Storygraph, I believe, is independently owned, and it runs a lot smoother. Like, you can give half ratings to books and stuff, and like you can you don't have to write out a full review. You can just do tick boxes. So like if you read something that was like, is this adventurous, mysterious, thrilling, suspenseful, happy, you can like just tick box it rather than having to like manually write out stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
So food for thought if you're gonna set something.
Yeah, I definitely want to set something because I want. It just goes to show that the second we break up for holidays, the first thing I do is I grab a book because I just want to read. And I think we're all at the mercy of our growing pile of read at some point. And I just hate seeing that. And, you know, I buy these books. I feel like Cameron Diaz in The Holiday. I buy these books and I never get to read them. But it's so true. I get to the holidays and I'm like, right, I'm going to do it. And same as you, I think when it was a 6-week holidays, I read a ton of books.
Yeah, I remember because we also took
binge reading.
break from Inkspill because we did the festival.
We did.
And you like just completely, I don't say like closed down, but you cocooned yourself. You made a safe, like you gave yourself a safe space and like
read.
Yeah.
And it was really nice. And I actually, in that time, I read A Little Life. And obviously that book could be used as a weapon. It's the equivalent of the Yellow Pages.
Yeah.
It was mega.
I haven't come to that yet. I've heard great things.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll discuss this
another
it's
time.
A whole conversation. But
do.
I had this. It's a massive book, and I think I binge read it because just every time I opened it and started reading it, it was like almost like a Netflix series to me. Each chapter was like a new episode, and I just wanted to get to the next one.
Like episodic writing, it's very interesting.
Well, I think I read it in 4 days, and it was a big. And everyone was like, "How did you do that?" Because it's such a mega book, and I just was obsessed with it. But I think that's it. When I'm in the zone and when I'm really inspired, I can just read, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. But unfortunately in this day and age we just live such busy, chaotic, hectic lives,
demanding. I have an iPhone and I've set like different modes of like do not disturb, and they all basically do the same thing, which is just silence all notifications and send the majority of calls through to the answer machine. But it is quite nice being like, right, I'm writing, and I put writing do not disturb on, and like it just clears everyone. And I think if people like, I don't know, like people call me twice, they can get through. Please don't call me twice unless you really need me. But it's been really helpful, especially because I work in marketing. Like social media is relentless. Like I actually have silenced the Inkspill social media notifications. I've silenced my own social media notifications just because like I would go and resolve things, someone would message me or someone would like comment and I'd like that, and then I'd instantly start scrolling again and I'd be like, I wanted to read or write or hang out with my partner.
It's funny though, isn't it, because we genuinely enjoy reading and writing. It's our life, and yet I will allow myself to be distracted at whatever cost. Like
100%.
Why is it that we love something so much and we want to dedicate our lives to it, but yet we procrastinate on such a huge level?
Maybe this ties in really well to the episode. And actually saying about getting started, and actually one of the main points for both of us getting started is hiding our phones. Silencing our partners.
Yes.
In a loving...
And our cats.
and
our tortoises.
It was shockingly quiet today.
No.
He's definitely fine.
Give him a prod.
we'll do that in the break. It's like getting started. Maybe like step one that we should at is stopping distractions, designating time. I put in my calendar and I do not adhere to it. Like I have writing on, I think Tuesday and Thursday nights is when I put it in, and I'm so quick to be someone like, do you want to go to the pub? Do you want to hang out? Do you want to play a game? Do you want to go to cinema? Anything? Do you want to? Literally, me and my partner the other week just sat in his flat and just scrolled on our phones for hours, and it was really good. I definitely I think there is a level of like allowing yourself to rot that should be necessary.
The rot is real.
The rot is real, and the rot is acceptable.
It is,
but we allow, and I'm saying we because we both agree on this, we both allow, and I'm sure people listening will agree that they allow themselves to, I mean, TikTok, they just will scroll on TikTok. And like I say, I did a load of story structure research and did very minimal writing, and I was ill, and definitely like writing, watching stuff was easier than writing. But I definitely should have been like, cool, okay, like a 7-act structure, let's look into this, or a 3-act structure, or like I looked at like non-Western story styles, which was story structures, which was super interesting and definitely really enlightening for someone who hasn't studied writing in a really long time. Have I done anything about that yet? No.
I think it's because there's an element of switching off your brain a bit, of brain dead activity. So like laying on a sofa and just staring at the TV screen. You're not taking everything in, but you're
not taking anything in a lot of time.
Not using your head, and that's nice.
Yes.
Whereas to sit in front of a laptop and just spend hours staring out of a window because the words aren't coming to you, but you've allocated that time in your diary to writing, I just don't. Sometimes I think, is that any more productive?
It's so to go back to my book, because this book is like the biggest labour of love I've ever done. I'm at a real point in my book where basically I can't decide whether the character should have some knowledge or they shouldn't. The protagonist should either know to do something or not. And that will influence the outcome of the book massively. And the way the book is pulling me is that they do know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to like commit to this and just write it, but I've definitely stalled this writing because I can't decide, because I feel it's better for the book that they don't know, but what the book and the narrative is telling me is that they do. And it's this really weird dissonance where I'm just like, this is how I feel, but like my writing is very instinctive and very like, just like I mentioned earlier, very pantser. Like I just go for it. So a lot of my poems are written in one go. I will just sit down and like absolutely chug through it and create. But to sort of answer your point, in my opinion, I think you do need that time to like invest in yourself, and your brain needs that time to like recognize that like, okay, now we're writing. And just like a little extra element, I watched a TED Talk. I'm into TED Talks at the minute. I'm really enjoying it. And one of the TED Talks was basically about we need to learn how to be bored again. We are so constantly overstimulated. It affects like 100%. Our hormones, our mental health, and our sleep, and like the really base functions of like living and eating. That we need to learn how to literally watch paint dry and be bored and let our like brain settle into like silence and stillness and unstimulatedness. And I think that plays into your point.
I think as a writer, I can't write unless my mind is completely clear and empty. I don't know why. If there's too much in there, it bleeds into my creativity, and I just think, well, I can't write right now because I've got a lot of washing in the washing machine, and it'll go smelly if I don't take it out right this very moment. And I think that's it. In modern time, and you know, in our day-to-day lives, it's getting harder and harder to get that moment of clarity, and so that I can just focus on my work. And it's hard, and I think it, like you said, it will resonate with a lot of people. I think we all try to find that perfect balance. But as you were talking, there were a few things that cropped up from when I did my masters. And one of them was a brilliant writer called Catherine Wilcox. She was leading a seminar once, and she said that the process of looking out the window and losing hours is just as important in the writing process as the writing itself.
I love
because whilst you're staring out that window, you're writing in your head. You're joining these arrows. You're joining these dots in your head, and that will eventually create the story.
Yeah.
And you can't do that unless you just sit and stare and think.
Yes.
So she said that's just as much of the writing process as possible, as that's just as much a part of the writing process as the writing itself. And I think lots of people think, oh, how many words did you write today?
Yes.
And it's not always about the word count. It's about the process, isn't it? The ideas you got down onto paper, the storylines you figured out in your head, not actually, you know, how many words did you write. And I think as well, another person who I was speaking to, I can't remember who it was one of my tutors, he said, we all seem to in life strive for that golden hour. We all seem to think that we need the hour in our day to sit down and write, and he's like, but actually you can probably achieve a lot more in a burst of 5 minutes.
Yes.
As you walk to the bus stop on your notes page.
Yep.
Maybe a quick 10 minutes whilst your pasta's boiling. So he kind of said that don't always push aside the 5 and 10 minutes in life in want of that golden hour.
I love that.
Take the minutes, because you can actually achieve a lot more than you think in that short burst of time.
Yeah, so I think tying into like the direction of this podcast, maybe we need to agree to that. Maybe we both need to like take like say, okay, we're not going to write an hour every day because that's not realistic. We both work full time. We do Inkspill. We both have creative pursuits and also lives, I believe.
Yeah,
like,
nothing. Social lives. Hang on.
Yeah, something like that. So maybe the first step of like this and what we would suggest to people listening is actually, let's just aim for 10 minutes a day. Let's aim for 10 minutes if you're on a commute and you can safely commit 10 minutes, or even if you're commuting and you just get to work 10 minutes early and you can sit in the car or the office and give yourself that 10 minutes.
Yeah,
that'd be great. If you're picking kids up, 10 minutes in the car before they get in, stuff like that.
True. And if you're driving, what I've started doing is voice notes.
Oh, I love voice notes.
Verbalise it and then write it down later.
But I'm laughing about this, but as we record this podcast, we both agree that we hate the sound of our own voice.
Yeah, cringe about it later.
Yeah. You can do like voice to text dictation though. So.
Yeah, then you can get someone like, I don't know, maybe get Homer Simpson to read it for you instead. I once had that. You could basically, whatever you said, it wrote it. What's that? You just said the word.
Dictated,
that's it. And then you could get different like characters to read it. So I had it as Homer Simpson for a while because for some reason he really spoke
resonated
to me.
yeah.
When Homer said
So
it
good.
all made sense.
Ah, you see.
So if you listen to our introductory episode, you will know that we are going to be having guests on each week. But for the first episode, Abby and I just thought it'd be a nice opportunity to talk about what the next 4 episodes are going to be about. And obviously this one is the idea mapping side of writing and kind of gathering your thoughts before embarking on your project. And we're going to talk about the projects we are going to be writing throughout this year that we're going to be discussing as this podcast progresses.
Yeah, because we, like we mentioned earlier, we haven't been like directly creative together. And we want this podcast to support other people being creative, whether you're like new at it and you're just like, I really want to try this, or you're like an old hand and you're established, but you want some like fresh perspectives, which, you know, hopefully we can offer. We were like, I say there's a responsibility. I'm not sure that's the right word, but there's like we owe it to ourselves and to this creative project we're doing together to actually have something that we write alongside. And we both really need the direction. I think it's fair, like to have a big project.
Definitely that. And I think both of us have discussed in the past and shared our kind of aggravation, I want to say, agitation, that we don't get the opportunity to write as much as we would like.
No.
And I found, since I joined kind of like this writers group that I'm in, that element of accountability helps. So if you know, we're recording a podcast episode next week and I've not written anything to discuss in that podcast episode, that's going to help me anyway. So I'm going to... Yeah,
definitely. So shall I start the project?
Yeah, so basically, just to reiterate, this is a project we're going to be working on throughout this year. So we're going to check in each episode to let you know how we're getting on with our projects. So you can kind of see... Well, we can discuss anything that we've discovered in ourselves.
Yep.
Any advice we've got, any tips we've got, and then maybe get some help from you guys as well. If you've got any advice you can offer us if we're struggling, because we're going to be on social media as well with this. So, Abby, kick us off. What are you going to be working on?
Yeah, I am going to write my first full collection of poetry.
Brilliant.
I have written collections in the past for like uni. Like a lot of assignments for me were poetry collections, but I haven't actually sat down and written a full like page poetry collection in a long time. Last year I invested a lot of time and energy into getting performance poetry. I wasn't say down, but it definitely wasn't down, but learning a lot about it and getting like more of a like a set of poems that I could like crack out for like open mics and poetry nights, and it served me really well. And I love spoken word, spoken poetry, performance poetry, however you want to call it. I've really enjoyed that. But I really, really, really wanted to come back this year and be like, I want to do a collection. I want to have... I love reading poetry collections. It's something I come back to a lot. It's a lot of what I recommend to people are poetry collections. But I haven't actually written a full like suite of like connecting poems.
And it's a different feeling altogether, isn't it? So like performance poetry is so different to page poetry, isn't it?
Hugely.
So you now need to kind of have a shift in mindset of how can you take the performance element out of it and have the words speak for themselves on the page.
Yeah, I understand. And like I haven't considered like how my poems are shaped and line breaks in a long time. I often write performance poetry as like long paragraphs where like the rhymes or the emphasis are in bold, and that draws my eyes. And occasionally there will be a bit more like classic poetry, sort of like shorter line structure, but more often than not they are these longer paragraphs where like I sort of push the rhythm to these like rhymes, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I definitely think that would lend itself to being read like as poetry, but I don't think it would lend itself to being like studied, acknowledged as like page. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a difference of like how you structure. I mean, you know more than me about how it's different.
You can have a lot more fun with it when you put it on the page as well, because there's an added layer of meaning. The second something gets printed and it's on that page, you can play about with meaning in terms of the way that you're making that poem look and some of the structural devices that you're popping in there. I mean,
stuff like punctuation. Like I am very lazy with my punctuation in performance poetry. It's very often commas, dashes, full stops. I don't bother with fancy line breaks unless there's like a real reason of like, I think a lot of performance poets do that sort of like, it's almost like a waterfall where they'll like fall onto like a half rhyme and it's like really beautifully done. It like pulls you and it's like really energetic and I love it. But yeah, I'm going to write a full collection. For me, like a full collection, I think is about 30 poems.
Okay.
I'm looking at you, I think.
It's hard to say, isn't it? I think they say chapbook. They say anything between 15.
Okay.
Around about 15 poems, and then I think it would be quite a short one if it's 30 poems. I think they say anything between 30 and 50. But I think it does. It depends on yourself of you know, what you want to put out there, because I was actually quite shocked at that myself. I was looking into publishing a collection and I thought I've got more than enough poems here, and they said actually no, minimum of 60 for a collection. I was like, that's an excessive amount of poetry.
Okay.
But it depends how long your poems are as well, I would say.
Yes, yeah, I think that's gonna be a really interesting thing is like also with my performance poetry, they're like minimum 3 minutes more often than not. I've had like 5-7 minute poems, which I love, and I'm definitely like I enjoy performing and I love the pull of it. Whereas page poetry can be a lot shorter, can be a lot more condensed, I have no issue with Instagram poetry like Rupi Kaur and Langliev. I think that they have, a topic for another time. For me, they have revolutionised and made poetry more accessible to people, and particularly women and like basically just non-white male people.
Yes.
Which is a whole thing itself. And I think often what I struggle with Instagram poetry is it is almost too short and there's more they could do with it and there's more they could pull from it. And it doesn't mean it has to be like a full page. I just think that sometimes often they even need like 2 or 3 more lines and it would be such a better poem for adding those 3 extra lines. Okay, so maybe I'll just say I'm gonna aim for 40 poems. Like 40 good poems is what I'm gonna go for.
I mean, I've written poems before that are 3 lines long, but it's like a burst. And as long as you're getting that message across that you want to communicate, it doesn't matter how long it is. Sometimes I think we over egg it, don't we? Because we feel we have to
gotta fill it,
bump it out, and it loses its meaning then, doesn't it? Whereas if you can say it in as concise a way as possible, I think that concision will always benefit you. And I'd have fun with that. Maybe like try writing some bits that you've never really written before. Try to do these kind of like 1-2 line poems and see kind of what comes, because I think that's quite fun. I
agree, and I don't have a theme at the moment because something I want to talk about how I'm going to get started in a second is that I just don't, there's no real topic that's like holding me at the moment. Like I don't know if it's going to be about me, about an experience, about the, I don't know, like massive global pandemic that we're all still kind of enduring through, that we have a weird short memory on. I don't know if I'm going to do about family or like I don't know where I'm going with it yet. And I think that for me is what I want to talk about with getting started. I am a pantser. I mentioned earlier, I do not plot. I do not plan. I'm very instinctive with how I write and instinctual. And I love that about myself. I really, really value it. I think getting started with this project, for me, well, first of all, we can go through my notes app and my Facebook messages to myself, because I have a little like conversation with myself that has everything in it. I share submission ideas, I share writing ideas, I share voice notes, I have everything. And to be fair, if that ever got lost, I would be so royally screwed. So I always think about this. Need to collect that down somewhere. I think for me, getting started on this project is just kind of like a brain dump of like, what do I want this collection to be? And also looking back, because I wrote 2 collections. Three. I wrote, so my first year at uni, I wrote Souvenirs, which was about when my granddad died, and literally about all his sort of belongings being around the house and being really like affected by that kind of weird physicality, and also like he'd been dying for a long time. He'd had dementia, and we'd lost him to that quite quickly, really, and very, very severely by the end. And it was kind of the first death I kind of see happen, and it was a really interesting thing to like, I wrote this collection as he was dying and kind of finished it as he died, and it was the first death I'd lived through. And then in second year, I wrote Running the Bulls, which is all about the end of like a very long-term relationship for like a 21, 22-year-old. I think I've been with a guy for like 3 or 4 years, I think, and I really thought this was it, and that was like true first love, and like realising how it ended and why it had to end, and how much better, I mean, I truly believe that now, how much better I was because it ended. And then in final year, I wrote Somewhere Deep in the Ocean of You, which was, I love this, and I may come back to this collection. This is the one thing that I'm like, I really love that collection, and it was very body image. It was me exploring my identity and like body image and like some sexual assault stuff and like stuff like that, and relationship sort of deterioration through lots of water imagery. And I remember writing in the commentary of that Florence Welch of Florence the Machine was told, I think it was like her 4th studio album, that she was not allowed to write any songs about water because she uses so much water imagery in her work.
Okay.
And she basically like sucked tears up and was like, no, and wrote I think 2 or 3 songs about water.
There's so much you can take just from water. But that's one of our themes for the year, isn't it?
It is. I think
just because it's such a
April.
huge... Yeah. April's theme's going to be water.
And yeah, that really influenced me. That quote of just being like told not to write about something, and she was like, no, this is so important to me. So yeah, I'm going to come back to those collections. I'm going to look at my spoken word poems, and I'm just going to like mind map, brain dump, to also look at influences. I think we're both hugely influenced by a lot of similar writers, and also lots of different ones. Like we're very like, the Venn diagram overlaps really healthily, but we also have our own circles between us and our influences, and I love that.
It's true, because I'm just listening to what you were kind of saying there. You very much, I think, see poetry as quite a therapeutic mechanism for yourself, in terms of you write from your own perspective of your own experience. And I really don't like placing myself in my poems. I find that too vulnerable. I think I'm not at that stage in my writing where I'm ready to explore myself through poetry. I explore other people. I explore society. I never talk about kind of myself and my own experiences. And so I think, yeah, like you say, we do have similar inspirations. We do interweave.
Yes, interlock.
That's the word I was actually looking for. But my fingers did this, and I was like, well, that's a weave. So yeah, we interlock. Yeah, very, very strongly. But we do also have our own directions, which I think is going to make for quite an interesting podcast, because we've got different angles that we're coming in this from.
100%.
Collections of poetry are hard though, aren't they? Because it's poetry, for me, I write whatever comes to me, and different things inspire me, and different things come to me at different points in my life. And so a collection needs to really, like you say, have that overarching, that unifying topic, theme, subject. But does it need to have that? Can you not just have a collection of poetry, of poems that you just wrote in a chunk of time, like Birthday Letters? Ted Hughes comes to mind.
I was literally about to talk about that, because Birthday Letters is on my TBR this year. I studied both versions of Ariel alongside Birthday Letters years ago, and I want to reread that trio, because I think they're so important.
Really evocative.
I mean, but I was literally about to say Birthday Letters is that classic time period.
That's exactly it. 25 years of a life lived, of almost, I see it as a coming of age collection.
Yeah.
And it was a really pivotal moment within Hughes's life and his career, and he just explored that through this collection, and I think it's brilliant. But it's unified by that notion. That's the golden thread, really. I guess it's his development of 25 years, but the poems are very sporadic, different topics, different, some are very political, some are very nostalgic, some are very vulnerable, and I think sometimes I think we find this, I think I personally have this pressure when creating a collection of poetry of it has to have this linear golden theme, but actually does it? I don't know. That's something you can explore, I guess.
That's why I was like, I don't want to set really structured. I've just upped my goal of like poems, because I didn't do the research. Like, maybe I'll come back to 30. We'll see. But
I may be making that up as well. I remember reading it once and just being like, whoa, does anybody want 60 poems from me in one go? Surely not.
It's a lot of poems. And it's not just 60 poems, because I could write 60 poems in like a matter of weeks. It's 60 good poems that like you
I was about to say, that's such a flex for a minute that you're like, no, but they need to be good. I was like, okay, yes,
I'm totally not shitting on you. Like I appreciate that. But I was just like, I don't know. So like when I come back to this, we can discuss it and be like, here's where we're at.
Yeah. No, but I like where you're kind of coming from there. It's going to start with delving into what you've written before, because I think quite often we forget about that, don't we? We've all written things in the past. We can learn from our past mistakes, or we can be inspired by our past.
Yeah.
If we've written something that we particularly liked and want to, bring back up again. And so I like that idea. And I think, like you say as well, just memory dumping for now, kind of getting all the words out there, word vomiting, seeing what you can kind of gather. I think that's a really good start. Yeah.
onto that, let's flip this and look at you. What are you going to do?
Well, I think actually I'm really glad because we haven't spoken about what our project's going to be until this very moment. So when you said you're going to do a collection of poetry, I was like, fabulous, because I'm actually going to be working on my novel.
Yes.
So I think that's going to be nice because you're going to cover the poetry side of things.
Yeah.
And I'm going to kind of then look at, similar but different novel writing. So basically when I was at university, when I was doing my master's degree, I told you earlier on, I had to create a manuscript. I created the first third of it, I would say. It's at 20,000 words.
Wow.
And maybe I will go a bit over. I don't think I'm going to be quite as ambitious as 90,000. I think for me it's going to be about a 60,000 word one, because that feels quite comfortable with me, because naturally I'm seeing these characters that I'm writing about at 3 stages of their life. So yeah, that's good. It's going to be, I think, about that word count. And yeah, I started it and I parked it, so I haven't actually written it. It's just been in my folders for about 2 years now.
Oh, and it was that long. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, I know. That's actually quite depressing when I think about it. It's been that long since I graduated. But anyway. So I'm gonna pick that back up because basically I joined a writers group and I started writing on a brand new novel called Arthur's in the Canal, and I was writing it and I just wasn't getting the response I wanted, and it was starting to feel quite forced.
From you or from other people?
From other people.
Right,
and I think that's another one that needs to park as the cogs turn in the background, and then maybe I'll come back to it again one day.
I think especially novels.
Yeah.
Says she who's writing her first, like I've started ones before, but this is the first time I actually even finished a first draft, which why I keep talking about it, because I'm delighted. But I think novels really have to ferment.
Yeah, 100%.
And we don't let them ferment. We're like, we must finish them. We must, like, especially when you're neurospicy, you're like, I must finish this.
Neurospicy.
That's me.
Bit of neurospice.
But like, there's definitely like a level of like leaving things alone from it.
But you never stop writing it, do you? Even though you've parked it, you're constantly writing it in your head. And I think I've parked the novel that I'm going to be writing for this project. It's called The Dirt Unites Us. And
which, can I just say, I love this title.
Yeah.
I remember this title so like vividly. Like, we talk about your novel so infrequently, and yet I know that I don't know, I just want to express how much I love this title. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I really like the title because it is a critique of social class and the social system that we've kind of built, and the working class towns that have been forgotten in that modern day development of social class, and so I think the title is carries quite a lot of meaning as well.
Yes.
So I've always loved this novel, but I just fell out of love with it because I did it for a dissertation for a master's degree, and I had a deadline. I had to meet it. I was striding towards this deadline, and it all became so forced and pressurized, and it just really soured the experience for me, the writing experience for me, and I just fell out of love with it, to be honest. I was sick of seeing it. I was sick of revising it and editing it, and I just didn't want to see it for a while. Fast forward 2 years, I've joined the writing group that I'm in now, and I said, Arthur's in the Canal isn't working for me at the moment. Can you read this instead? This is something I was working on 2 years ago. And they loved it. And it filled me with joy that somebody read it, and I got some really good feedback on it, and it's re-inspired me, basically. There's a lot that needs changing because as a writer, I've definitely developed a lot over the past 2 years. I think poetry's helped with that as well, because I'm very literal in this book. It's very concrete, and I'm going through now and I'm adding that poetic flair, which I think works really nicely. Kind of, it adds this vibrancy to it, so I'm quite enjoying that.
In the past, I've talked about your writing, and I really want to reaffirm this like imagery of for me, you write, you have cracked concrete and you have stuff growing out of that concrete, and that's how I see you. And that's what I feel like what you just said describes is like, I
think that's exactly it. I saw the cracks in the past draft, and now I'm kind of adding the flora throughout it to kind of bring it to life and bring the characters to life, and I'm really enjoying that. So I've now edited the first third of it. Yay. So at this point of the project, I've written a third. I'm at 20,000 words. My ambition this year is to finish it. So I want to finish a first draft. I want to get it out there to some people for them to be reading it, and I want to see maybe where it could go. But I need to finish it. I need to actually finish a book. I've never done that before.
No, I just want to add to this because my partner works in video games, and I was talking to him about the first draft of my book, which I mentioned earlier was like the skeleton. It was, I mean, when I say bare bones, there are such time jumps. There's stuff written at the end that does not happen at all. My friend who read it was like, where has this come from? Have I missed something? I was like, no. There's also a whole scene that I literally wrote in bold because I was like, I need to finish this. I never went back to fill that in. And no one mentioned it till I did my reread. reread. And it's like, it is truly diabolical. And I think something we need to like just identify in this podcast is like, just do it, just finish it, do not go back and edit, whatever it is, just go and keep the momentum going. And I really value that. And I mean, you have much more experience novel writing, but I want that for you. But he works in video games, and he talks about how when they're doing programming, they don't start with like, I think it's like line 0 or whatever, they don't start with line 1, they start with line 0.
Ooh. And
instead of seeing draft 1 as your first draft, actually calling it draft 0, and just accepting that is like the throwaway, the beginning. It doesn't count, it doesn't matter. It is what it's like almost like you're looking at a landing. Instead of like going on to the first step, you're just walking to the bottom of the stairs and seeing that as like draft 0. And draft 1, which some people call your second draft, is the first step.
Yeah.
And it really helped me, and I wonder if I want to sort of like share that, and if that would be something that would help sort of you feel better about it.
I think that's exactly it. I think I do, the way I had to go about writing that novel was problematic in its own way, in the fact that it was for a dissertation.
Yeah.
So I did have that deadline, and it had to be to a polished standard. Whereas what I would have liked to have done, like you say, is just plough through and get the entire thing written down to a really shoddy standard where it's done, and then it's about putting on the muscle and putting the meat on the bones.
Yep.
But I had to get it to this polished, perfected standard, but I'd only got the first third. So a lot of these things I start, but they're very underdeveloped because I didn't have the opportunity to sustain it and actually think, where do I want this to go? I don't know at this point. So it did feel a little bit lost. So I think that's it. So I need to finish off the first draft and then go through and refine, basically.
Yeah.
But in terms of my
getting started
process, how I get started, I am the most annoying person when it comes to this.
You're a plotter, aren't you?
God, yes. And you see, again, that's why it's good, because we are chalk and cheese.
We are so opposite, and I love it.
Yeah, united by this love of
I could see your
writing.
face cringing when I was like,
as you were saying it, I was like,
I just left a scene undone, and Hannah just like nails her in her leg.
And
like,
when you were just talking about like maybe some, because I'm such a picky thing for continuity errors as well, so I was just like, I overthink that too much to the point where my writing sometimes I think is a little bit dead, because I'm so picky about they've walked from this place to another, so I need to make sure they've done this and I need to make sure they've done that.
Yeah, the journey's there and they must be tired and dirty because they wouldn't have washed them. And I'm just like, and they arrived.
And that's exactly it. And then I realise I'm reading a novel of just picky, stupid little details that are completely irrelevant.
And also the reader will never care.
Yeah.
Like, there's so few times a reader actually truly cares about this stuff.
Like, I've never slammed down a novel and been like, hang on, they didn't do this. And I think, so unless it's very, frequent and actually a massive jump. But I think I focus too much on the little things. But I mean, we can balance each other out in that sense, can't we? Maybe absolutely. I can say you need to add this and you can say to me, actually, you don't need that. And I think that would work nicely.
Yeah, I think we haven't discussed this, and feel free to say no, but I would love us to share the projects.
Oh God, yeah.
Good, okay.
I saw that's how we'd kind of do this anyway, because I think then we can, discuss on here help each other out basically as well. And I think we're here almost as if we're the experts. We are not.
No.
I think that's the thing that I want to get across here.
That's the joy of Inkspill.
We're creating this podcast because we also want to engage with like you guys, get your advice, what works for you, how can you help too, and I want it to be as collaborative as possible, basically.
Yeah, and it's also like accountability and like sharing that process, because like Inkspill is not for published poets. We've definitely shared work from published poets. We've enjoyed work from published poets.
Yeah.
Hannah is a published poet. She's great. But I'm not. And there's definitely a direction of like, we both want to get more. We do want to be professional writers. I think we both agree. We'd love to just work full time on our writing and just have that and enjoy that. But that's not why we founded Inkspill. It's not why we do Inkspill. We want Inkspill to be for everyone to enjoy, to share, and to write and to read. Like, it's just like, we're so passionate about that, and that's what we want.
Yeah. I think kind of going back to what we were saying, for me, my biggest barrier is always the planning process.
Yes.
So like, you can just crack on and just write and just plow through it. I can't physically pick up a pen or open up my laptop until I've mapped out the entire project. So I need to know exactly who my characters are, what those characters are like, how those characters interlock and their relationships with one another, what journey each of those characters is going to go on. And I will literally write out each chapter, what's going to happen in each chapter, which characters are involved in each chapter. And I basically write the novel in note form, and I've got a massive whiteboard at home.
Of course you do,
arrows, scribbling, highlighting, colour coordination. And I'm that kind of writer. I have to get it completely right in my head first. until I can then start writing, because if not, I'm the kind of person who goes down rabbit holes and I'll go so off piste that, and I think some people think going off piste makes writing better. In my case, it doesn't. I go off piste and I waffle and nothing makes sense, and then I'll waste an hour writing thousands of words that I just delete.
Can I fight you on that?
Go on.
Because did you waste an hour? Did you actually waste an hour? Or did you take an hour in your writing and it went somewhere you didn't anticipate, but you spent an hour writing, and while it wasn't useful for that project, you can always Frankenstein it back together.
Very true. I can always park it
You're
somewhere.
so quick. You are so, and I mean this affectionately, you're quite vicious in your writing. You're just like, if it is not on topic, if it is not on plan, if it's not directional, it's useless.
Backspace is my best friend.
Yeah, and I'm just like sat here like cringing, being like, Hannah, you wrote for an hour, that's amazing. And you're just like, well, it wasn't on what I wanted, so off it goes.
That's exactly it. And I think I am my own worst enemy sometimes because I hold myself to really annoying
Ridiculous
standards.
Yeah,
like I wouldn't even say the high standards. It's just me being so picky and pedantic, and it limits me quite a bit, I think, because I actually can't get going until I know exactly what I want to get across, and I can only do that by intense pre-planning.
Yes.
But it works for me. That is my system. I'm not the kind of person who can
I want to stress, I'm not shitting on you at all. Like, I don't want you to think
I'm just not. I think if I was just told to sit and write and free write, and just see where it takes me, I don't find that inspiring. I find that overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I find it intimidating. So I like to have everything pre-planned. But that's just the kind of person I am. It's just me in life. I'm very organised. Everything's in nice, neat boxes. Yeah. And I'm a teacher. So, I mean, it's always going to be the case, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But that's my process. But maybe this will be a nice opportunity for me to practice another process.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest is, like, if I feel this leads us really nicely into writing exercises that we want to both give ourselves and give to the people, because they are crying out for more writing exercises. And I guess the first one for me that I think I would really like to share between us and between other people is 10 minutes of free writing every day.
You love a free write.
I love a free write. I think free writing unlocks my brain. I think free writing there is no limit on it. There is no goal attached to it.
No pressure.
There's no pressure. I think 10 minutes is, I mean, I'm saying 10 minutes for us. It's whatever suits you guys as well. If you have half an hour and you want to free write for that entire time, it's up to you. If you have 5 minutes, 2 minutes, just whatever you can. But I think for us, I'd be really intrigued to, like, maybe not every day, but like maybe like the majority of the week, however you want to split your week up, you do 10 minutes of free writing. And I will also do that.
Yeah.
But like, I don't want to call it homework because that's silly, but I want to I listened to another podcast, and in that she talked about I'm sorry, it's called The Daily Pep, and it is delightful. I've been listening since the pandemic, and in that she said, rather than attaching could, should, would to your goals, you just go, I can and I try. So instead of saying I'm going to write 10 minutes every single day, I'm going to try to write 10 minutes every single day. And oh my god, super revolutionary for me, like genuinely a game changer. I'm such like a ridiculously goal orientated for a person who doesn't respond well to goals. And maybe my writing exercise that I'd like us to share is I'm going to try to write 10 minutes every day. Yeah,
and I will do that too. And I like the idea of the free writing because that's something I need to work on, I think. Just kind of seeing where...
Do you hate it? I can see you like...
There's fear in my eyes. But that's a good thing about a podcast because none of you can see that.
Yeah. But also that works for both of our projects.
It definitely does. And I think that is something I'd like to do as well, because that goes back to what we were talking about earlier on. Rather than trying to grab that golden hour, grab that golden few minutes. And I think that's something I definitely need to be doing. So I'll do that. Definitely. I think for me, because my novel, it's about a town and it's about people, and I actually got the inspiration to write this novel from when I was a bartender, and I was always overhearing people's stories. I mean, obviously us being northerners, we're surrounded by natural storytellers, aren't we?
The oral tradition in the north is insane, and we do not acknowledge it as people, as a community, as writers. Like, we do not just like sit there and be like, oh my goodness, it is so natural to share a story. To share life, to share experiences and struggles. And I think there's just something so beautiful about that. So I think that's what inspired me to write this
novel, I was hearing so many different stories, and I was like, somebody needs to tell these stories. They're not coming out of these small spaces, and therefore nothing's been done. So I think what I'm going to do, and I love doing this, not sure if I should be advocating it, but eavesdropping. I love going to public places and sitting with a pad and paper and listening in on other people's conversations. And it's nosy, and it's maybe a little bit problematic, but you're never going to expose them. It's going to stay anonymous. But I love hearing about people's problems, writing them down, and then using them to inspire natural kind of conversation and dialogue in my novel. So I think if you're feeling a little bit stumped and you don't know where to begin, what I would do is eavesdrop on a conversation. It might be on a bus, might be in a cafe, might be at the supermarket, and take note from that conversation you've eavesdropped on and see if that can start the ball rolling. Let them become the characters in your novel.
Yeah, often people say really beautiful lines in like really common everyday conversations, and you're just like, oh my god, if that was in a book, like people will go mad for it. It'll be on like, you know, there's classic like Tumblr, TikTok, like book edits.
It was like isolated. Yeah.
People would go mad for it, but someone's just said that and they've thrown it away. Like they've given this. This sounds really really silly, but they've given it to the universe. They've just given this language away, and then they're not. You know, if you hear someone talking about their book or their creativity, that's their stuff. Like leave that alone.
Yeah.
But if you just hear someone throw something out there, I for my novel was talking the other day about the current political situation that's going on around the world, and I said something. And I like said it out loud, and then I just turned and wrote it down straight away because it tied in beautifully to the setting of my book. And I was like, and my partner was like, yeah, that was a really good line. I was like, thank you.
It reminds me of that. This might be a bit off topic, but you know the Fleabag episode where she's like, I know we're arguing, but I really think you should write that down.
Yes.
You know, because he just like comes out with this golden line, and I think that's it. So yeah, eavesdropping and seeing if anyone's got any gold that you can, you know, dig without them really knowing, and also just kind of taking as much inspiration from the world around you as possible. Make the mundane extraordinary. And I think that's definitely something I'm trying to do in my novel. I'm taking this very mundane, bleak, concrete setting, and I'm trying to show that there's life in that space. Yep. So I think that's it as well. As you walk around, I've always taken inspiration from Orwell's Why I Write, you know, his essay. There's this really beautiful moment in it where he says that as a writer he never stops writing, because as he's just walking down the street he's constantly writing in his head. Yes. So he's thinking about, how would I put this street on a page? So I think that's another kind of thing that I think we could work on. As we're walking around, never stop writing through thought. So think about, how could I put that park on a page? How can I put that tree on a page? How can I put that bench on a page? And so just always write, even if it's not the physical act of writing.
Yeah.
So I think there's 3 manageable ones, aren't there? Yeah.
So do you want to just say it again? So
to summarise.
Yes. I'm going to try to free write for 10 minutes every day.
Yes. I'm going to try and eavesdrop on as many conversations as possible, like a weirdo, but for creative purpose. And then also take inspiration from the mundane. So if you are maybe finding your job a little bit uninspired because you may be in an office block most days, or you don't really get to leave your desk most days, maybe just have a look around and think, well, how can I write this space?
Yeah.
And put it onto a page.
I love that. Yeah. And with that, I think we're done.
I think we have done. Yeah, that was I really enjoyed this first episode. I think it's been fun.
I have too.
And I'm already feeling very inspired. I'm sorry just to cut you off there, but I'm like quite excited because I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go home tonight and actually, you know,
get going,
which is nice.
It's really good. It's really important. And I'm glad I am too. I'm also just like overfaced with like, oh, I have to really think about
this. Yeah, we've actually got to do this now.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
It has been an honour, a privilege, a delight to have you here. We can't wait to share next week what we have achieved with these goals, if we've achieved these goals, because that's a very realistic point of this.
Yeah. I will be back to work next week as well, so that will be quite interesting to see if I do actually keep up with these things that I'm putting out there.
Yeah, but if we don't, we talk about that because that's realistic.
That is realistic. As of next week as well, we are going to be having our lovely guests joining us, so it won't just be me and Abby. For the next 3 weeks, we've got 3 wonderful guests coming to share their experience with us, so that's really exciting.
Very exciting.
But yeah,
thank you.
Thank you very much, and we will see you next week. Have a lovely week.
Have a lovely week. Bye, guys.
Bye.